In life, we all encounter obstacles, and those obstacles come in all different shapes, sizes, and forms. The question is, how do we handle those obstacles? Do we attack them head on, or do we allow them to make us quit? Welcome to the No Quit Living podcast, where we aim to motivate and inspire listeners to never give up on themselves, their dreams, or their goals. We will interview successful people from all walks of life as they share their no-quit stories when they had the choice to give up or give in, but they didn't. We thank you for listening, and we hope to be that jolt of positivity as you go for your greatness. Welcome to episode number 189 of the No Quit Living podcast. I'm your host, Christopher J. Worth, and today's theme of the day is persistence. Our quote of the day comes to us from Thelma Barnes. Your dreams can come true through the power of persistence. Today's episode is sponsored by the good people over at West Fair Communications, who publish the Westchester County Business Journal and the Fairfield County Business Journal. These newspapers do a wonderful job in covering all aspects of the business world within two of the most influential markets in the New York metropolitan area. You can also take advantage of their daily news feeds, which keep track on the companies and thought leaders in these important regions. For more information, take a look at www.westfaironline.com. Trust me, once you start reading, you won't quit. It is a complete honor to bring you today's episode. Our guest is full of great insight, energy, and positive ideas to help us all succeed. David Osborn himself is an incredibly successful individual that absolutely brings it today. He even shares a story with us where he actually fired himself. From goals, books, affirmations, morning routines, and mentors, we discuss it all. I hope you enjoy today's episode. David, I'd like to welcome you to the No Quit Living podcast.
Thank you, Christopher.
I appreciate you being here. So the first question I ask everybody is, are you ready to bring it today?
Let's do it, man. I'm ready.
Awesome. So the number one objective of our show is to both motivate and inspire listeners to never give up. And I was curious if you have either a no-quit story of your own or perhaps a really challenging time that tested you and you could have given up or given in, but you didn't.
When I was building my first businesses in Dallas, Fort Worth, my franchise is under the Keller Williams system. Young and not capable enough to do the job. And what I ended up having about 3 years into it was sort of a mini nervous breakdown. I'd bought a bunch of franchises. I was trying to do everything from building the desks to repairing the computers to recruiting the management to recruiting the agents to training to teaching. And I just was overloaded. I had more work than I could do. And I started getting this rash across my chest, and it was like super painful. I could barely sleep and it was killing me. I was in meetings and I could only think about this painful rash. So I went to the doctor and the doctor said, "Oh my goodness, you've got shingles." I think I was about 30, 31 years old at the time. And he said, it's weird that someone your age would have shingles. It normally only comes on like 50 and 60-year-olds, and it's caused by stress. And he said, if you don't do something about it, it can get really bad. It's potentially fatal, but probably not, but very painful. And I was given that information. I said, oh, wow, that's crazy. So I went back to my team and I said, look, whatever I'm doing isn't working. So I need to, I'm going to replace myself. I'm going to quit. So it was a no quit moment. But I said, but I'm not going to quit badly. I'm not just going to walk out the door. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hire a replacement for me. Obviously, I'll remain in ownership, and I'm going to go take a couple seminars. So And I'm telling you this very logically. At the time, I remember trying to do the job and trying to grit through it and, just not able to concentrate on the recruits or the management meetings because I was in pain and I was just super stressed out. I hadn't got the right skill set on how to manage these businesses. So I go to a retreat, and in the retreat, I learned so many things. But one of them was the richest guy I knew at the time. I went to see him. He was worth about $50 million. He said, every day my secret to success is simple. Just write down the 7 most important things and do the top 3. That's it. And then I went to another seminar, and it was all about like self-talk. And what I realized was the way I was talking to myself is, if anyone talked to my kid the way I talked to myself every day back then, I would punch him in the face. Like, my self-talk was so negative and so critical. And so over a process of sort of 6 months, 6 weeks was the immediate part, but 6 months, I kind of reconstructed myself. And I started delegating everything, and I started only doing the vital, important stuff and blowing off the other 90, 95%. And I started talking to myself positively and just spent a lot of time learning on just letting stuff go, letting it go, and just kind of moving on. Just like I do in sports. You get knocked down, you get a penalty, you got to jump up and you got to be ready for the next play. I didn't have that skill prior to this moment. Well, 6 months later, I went back to my team and I found my replacement. It's me. And I literally became born again to myself. I became a new person. And I stopped being the guy trying to do everything, treating it all equally. And I just delegated everything. And I only did the recruiting and the hiring of the management and the setting of the vision. And it changed my life. My results got way better. I had a way more fun and I made a ton more money. But it was a very painful 6 months.
You know, it's interesting. I don't know if we've ever had a no quit, fire yourself, and then come back a better version of yourself story. So I really appreciate you touching on that.
My pleasure. It was tough, but I loved being reborn. Again, you don't get reborn without blood and fire, I guess. So I kind of got reborn to myself, and I would never take that out of my life, although at the time it was extremely painful.
You know, it's interesting that you touch on that is because it's the people that come on the show, they talk about those painful moments, and most of the time they were the most painful moments, but they led them to where they are. And I think no matter where you are in life, the most successful people that I know, they've failed more often. So with that in mind, I wanted to ask you, David, what does success look like, or what does it feel like to you?
Success is being able to do what you want, when you want, with whom you want, how you want. So for me, I love business. I love building stuff, but I like to be able to delegate almost everything. So success means to me I have enough resources to hire a great team. And success means to me that I have the skill set to hire great people. And success means to me that those great people are winning through process of being in relationship with me. So that to me is one part of success. The second part of success is that's doing it with who you want. And then doing it how you want requires a great deal of money. So that's staying in the hotels you want, driving the car you want, living in the place you want. And also it means, giving the way you want to. So, my wife and I were touched by Scott Harrison at Charity Water. And he told the story of like how 700 million people don't have access to clean water, and their entire day is spent just getting clean water. And the story he told was so touching, and we cried. And we got engaged in that, and we've now brought clean water to about 50,000 people, according to their stats. I haven't gone out there and dug a trench. I just write a check. But we built 25 wells in mostly in Ethiopia now, but in various parts of Africa that allegedly bring clean water to 1,300 people per well or something like that. So that's also really cool that money can do. I had my nanny was crying the other day because her niece couldn't afford to go to college in Mexico. So we just picked that up. So that's funny. The family would only pay for the boys, but not the one girl. So we picked that up at $6,000 a year. And now she's graduating this summer. And I told her the only thing I want in gratitude is a picture of her on her graduation, with her graduation cap. And then when she has some money to find somebody less fortunate and help them out in the future. So, that's the resources you get from wealth. And then I think to me, success also is having a great relationship with your wife and being a great father and having a great physical health. So it's a lot, but to me, that's what success is.
No, and I love this question because there is no right or wrong answer, and it's really important because it opens up our guest a little bit to talk about what success looks like or feels like, and you touched on quite a few different things, so I appreciate that. So if you had to give our listeners just a short version of exactly what it is you do today, what is it you're doing today for a career and as your hobbies?
I have 3 legs to my stool. One is I have a single family real estate company with my partner in Dallas called Go Management. We sell 35,000 homes a year, about $9 or $10 billion worth of sales. We're the 4th largest residential real estate company in the U.S., according to Real Trends. Then I have a private equity fund called Magnify Capital, and we have raised and deployed close to $50 million in that fund, and we started that a year and a half ago. And then the third component is sort of the intellectual property. I have a mastermind for guys called Go Abundance for men entrepreneurs, and we're just starting a ladies division. And then I've got my books, Wealth Can't Wait, Miracle Morning Millionaires. So the intellectual property is more of a contribution. It makes some money, but it doesn't make very much, but it's a way of giving back. It's a legacy piece. So those are really the 3 things I'm engaged in: private equity, single family residential sales, and then the intellectual property and training and coaching piece.
I don't think you do enough. You should probably add a couple more legs to your stool.
I'm definitely nuts. I'll tell you that.
So if you had to define yourself, David, but you could only use one word, what would that word be?
Persistent. Enthusiastic is a second close, but persistent is the one I would choose.
It's a great word. And one of the things we often touch on is the importance of a morning routine. And I was curious if you have a morning routine that you swear by.
Well, I met Hal Elrod, who wrote The Miracle Morning quite a few years ago, 6 or so years ago. And I loved the concept so much that I wrote a book with him called Miracle Morning Millionaires. And it is what the wealthy do before 8 a.m. that will make you rich. And yes, I have a miracle morning routine I follow probably 200 days out of the year. I don't always get it in. And it has 6 steps: silence, affirmations, visualizations, exercise, reading, and scribing, writing in the journal. We'll call that the savers. And the book I wrote with Hal, which I think is a really good book, mainly because of the great editors that edited my writing into a great book. But it's just how to visualize your way to success, how to know that you're going to win, how to win the morning to win the day. And in the morning, what I do is I wake up beside my wife, and I'm usually up way before her, like 5 a.m., 5:30. And I'll do 10 minutes of meditation, 10 minutes of affirmations and visualizations mixed together. And then I pop up and go hit my, it's a cliche, I know, but I have the Peloton, which I absolutely love. I rode it this morning for 45 minutes. And then I went and got in my swimming pool, which is 49 degrees this morning, which I don't get to do all year long. But in the winter, it's really a great shocker to just get into that pool and then get up and at 'em. Then I'm having breakfast with my kids and I'm ready to roll. And then and when I get time, I also will read a little bit. And then I love to journal and review my goals. So that's my morning routine. And I'm pretty religious about it. So like I said, I do some of it 200 days out of the year, and then I do the full thing probably 100 to 150 days out of the year, where I get all 6 of them in.
No, Hal's been a guest on our show, and he's a great guy. And speaking of reading, is there anything that you're currently reading or something that you've read recently that you'd like to recommend to our listeners?
Yeah, I mean, there's a book called The Miracle Equation that is coming out, also written by Hal Elrod, and I think it's an excellent book. I got the advanced copy, so I was able to read it, and I think that's a great one. There's also a book, again, it's an advanced reader copy, called Tribe of Millionaires, coming out this summer. I would say those are 2 great books. The Miracle Equation is great.
Yeah, I saw on Hal's Instagram today, he was, I guess, working on the audiobook, so I actually commented on that, so it's kind of funny that you just mentioned that. Tribe of... do you say Millionaires?
Tribe of Millionaires, coming out in June.
Who's that written by?
My team. It's about our mastermind group, which is for you have to be worth $1 million to get into the mastermind group. And it's really good. I've read it. I love it. It's a good book. Again, when I say I wrote it, it's really a team of writers. We read it and edit it. It took 7 years.
Did you say 7 years?
Yeah, that one took 7 years. Wow. Yeah, 7 years. And so now I use ghostwriters and I just dictate and they write it, and it's way better. That's why I say Miracle Morning Millionaires is good and Tribe of Millionaires is good, because I just dictate stuff and they take it and make a great story out of it. And it's way better than the 7 years I spent grinding away behind the keyboard. Because of that, Wealth Can't Wait's actually like 5 books in one, and it has a tremendous amount of value, but I would never go through that process again. You start off one day, say, I'm going to write a book, and expect it to have it done in 90 days. And then 7 years later, you're finally finishing it. It was quite an ordeal.
No, that is a long time. So having written 2 books yourself, do you have any advice you'd give to any of our listeners that are thinking about or want to write that book? Sure, absolutely. Use a ghostwriter right off the bat. I mean, I ended up going back to the publisher that I originally rejected. If I'd have just gone with them right off the bat, they offered ghostwriters and editors and the whole bit. And I was very stubborn the first time, and I wanted to write it all myself, wanted my words. And so I tapped out like piles and piles of drivel with some good stuff in there. And then it got bigger. The stack got bigger and bigger and bigger. And then all of a sudden it was too big. And then I hired some editors, and they edited it and edited it and edited it. And over time, they distilled the pearls from all the dross. But if you hire a writer right off the bat and just, get the right one, you can just dictate stuff and they'll make the words flow and make them good. And so if I had to do it again, I'd obviously do what I've done with the last 2 now, which is just hire the guy, have him interview me. And 7 months is all Miracle Morning Millionaires took. And I think it's a great book because the guy that wrote it is an actual writer, whereas me, I'm a real estate guy that was trying to write. So do that, have the right team, probably self-publish. It's really hard to make money in books. I've read 5 books this year, probably by friends, maybe 4, but that were written by friends. And they're great books, but they don't sell. It's really hard to get them sold unless you have but it's a great legacy piece. Your kids will know you did it. You'll know you did it. It's not an easy thing to accomplish. I was lucky enough to hit New York Times bestseller with Wealth Can't Wait. So that's an all-time label that no one can take away. But if I were doing it again, I would just hire a ghostwriter and dictate and let them write it. No, I like what you said before. Is you're in the real estate world and you worked with somebody that specializes in writing books, and you said something that was interesting. Is have the right team in place, and I think that's such a miscommon thing, and where people don't realize the importance of it's okay to ask for help, and it's okay to get the right people on your team, and maybe they might do more of the quote unquote writing, but you're still involved. So I'm really glad that you touched on that, because it's something that I think people look at the word vulnerable and don't realize that it's okay to ask for help, especially in different things that you're not an expert in.
Absolutely, man. That's the secret of life, isn't it?
It is, and it took me 40 years to understand it, but I think I'm getting it now.
Yeah, that was kind of part of the breakdown that I had to get the breakthrough too, is the same thing. The other thing, that multimillionaire I knew, of course, today I have a billionaire that coaches me, Gary Keller, and he told me the same thing. He's like, you should delegate everything that you don't want to do, that you're not very good at, everything, and you should hire people to do it. So once I learned that, my house is literally a revolving door of people coming to take care of the pool or mow the yard or clean the house or do a million things. And I just concentrate on doing the absolute things that I love, which from my point of view is finding deals, finding great talent, and creating vision. So I only try to do those three things. If I'm caught in anything else, it's not the highest and best use of my time. So it's pretty interesting when you learn to delegate. You really learn that humans are a community, and if you try to do everything yourself, you're actually harming the community. If you allow the guys that know how to repair cars to repair cars, if you allow the people that paint your house to paint your house, and you don't try to save every buck and do it yourself, you're actually creating a cycle, a flow in life, and it enables you to get further along in your life and make more money because you're also allowing other people to do what they do well. And it's such an interesting lesson, and I've really adopted it at a high level now. And it almost seems like I get blessed with more and more abundance the more I'm willing to bless others with contracts to do what they need to do in their different parts of the universe.
You know, you have your group, which you call Go Abundance. I wanted just to ask you to touch on the word abundance and what it means to you.
Abundance to me means prosperity. It means being blessed. It means just having really good things going on in your life, having people you love, having friends you love, having a wife and kids you love, or vice, if you're a woman, obviously, or whatever. I mean, in today's world, it could be all kinds of things, but just being surrounded by people that love you and doing what you love to do every day in an environment you really like, and then keeping your body in good shape. And, to me, I'm lucky enough to have a lot of that. I don't know that I had it earlier. Like in my 30s, I just worked a lot. I probably did in 10 years, like most entrepreneurs. But today I've been blessed with, really great things going on. Al Elrod lives 800 yards from me with his daughter, and my daughter are best buds. They go to the same school. They're both 9. And there's a bunch of kids here, and they've got neighbors that we really like on the other side of them. So it's just a really nice community. To me, that's abundance. I think I've been blessed with abundance right now because of the hard work I did earlier, not only on my work, but even more so on me, figuring out how to be a better man so that I could bring more to my job, to my relationships, to everything around me.
It's interesting. You touched on before is the breakdown to get to the breakthrough, and it goes back to what I said before. It's that whole failure concept of leading to success. So with that in mind, I wanted to ask you, what's the advice you would give yourself, the 20-year-old version of yourself, assuming that the 20-year-old David would have listened?
Yeah, that's cool, man. So one thing I did, which I was proud of in hindsight, is I went hitchhiking around the world for 2 years. So if I was a young person today, I would certainly travel. And because you're going to work eventually, and all that exposure to the world kind of changed me a little bit, gave me a different perspective. The second thing I would say is buy real estate. I mean, I bought real estate, and I started in 97 with my first property when I was in my 20s. But honestly, I should have bought more. I should have bought something every year, but I'm a real estate guy. But you don't wait to buy real estate. You buy real estate and wait. The other thing I'd have told myself is quit fighting the system so much. I was such a rebel back then. I think I was a rebel without a clue. It caused me to work way harder than I really had to. Just do the most important stuff. Let everything else fall by the wayside. Don't stress it. And then the most important work is the work you do on yourself. Just keep going to the seminars, keep listening to the podcast, keep reading the books. To this day, that is the number one thing that's changed my life. My dad was a soldier. My mom was a realtor. And she didn't finish college. Neither one of them had a business background. I mean, she never went to college. Dad was a military guy. So neither one of them had a business background. So I had to pick all that up from seminars, from teachers, from mentors. And that's what you do is you gotta keep working on you, and that will pay you for a lifetime.
So I got to ask that for a second, because it's a fascinating concept, and it's something that I've done. And the reason I started doing it was because of my father always teaching me to read and learn, and then being an athlete myself, I was always looking to improve on different things. So where did you get that mindset, or did you just develop it over time?
Well, first off, I wished I was an athlete, because I think athletes get it. If you've performed at any high level, I love hiring athletes. If you've performed at any kind of high level in sports, the level of discipline and dedication it takes to get there. I was a very mediocre athlete. No one was picking me first on the playground. But I had sort of an inner drive, just because I may not have had the most athletic ability or the most big. I was a pretty small kid too, but I had this inner drive that was never quite satisfied. I was always wondering why I wasn't being picked first, although the reasons were obvious, because I couldn't, do the sports as well as the other kids. But I was like, why am I not that much better? Why this, why that? Now, as I followed that, I kind of developed a philosophy of like, why not me? Like if other people have this stuff, why can't I have it? If there's the word billionaire, for instance, why can't I be a billionaire? If there's guys that have amazing balance in life, why can't I have that? If you can be incredibly healthy, in your 50s or late 40s, like I am, why not that? So I just sort of, I've adopted that for my mantra. And then over time of applying myself, I've gotten so good at it now, but I remember 30 years ago, I wasn't. I was scattered. I was a procrastinator. I was all over the place. And then over time, if you just keep working on it, you develop disciplines, and you develop, my least favorite word as a 20-year-old was discipline. One of my most favorite words today is discipline. My least favorite word in my 20s was accountability. And today, probably my most favorite word is discipline and accountability, because I know that discipline and accountability is what brings me a 10 out of 10 relationship with my kids and my wife, brings me great health, and brings me financial success. So yeah, I think I developed it over time, but I do believe that leaders are grown, not necessarily born. Some are born maybe, but most of us have to sweat and work at it. But I think the hunger, the desire I had for more, never really quitting on what was possible for me, even in spite of the darkness and the difficult times. If you just don't quit on yourself and you keep persevering, once you get to the other side, it's pretty cool.
All right, you touched on our most favorite words. So we have a clothing line, and on the back of our clothing line, whether it's our shirts, our hats, our sweatshirts, it's #accountability. So I have to ask you, what does the word accountability mean to you?
Accountability means to me having a system in place that makes you do what you sometimes don't want to do, so you can be who you do want to be. So accountability is getting you to do what needs to be done so that you can get the outcome you want, even though at times you don't want to take that action. So, like for us, accountability is having a fitness coach, a doctor that I know every quarter is going to check my body fat, check my blood. And I know that's coming up. So it motivates me to keep my body fat low. I'm always trying to beat it. So I've had this doctor now for 2 years, and every quarter I've gone in, my body fat's been improved. It means having, when I wrote my book, I had a co-author with me, and we set targets that we held each other accountable to, with consequences if you didn't do it, like paying one another money or buying a very expensive dinner. Accountability means, obviously spending time with my kids and being faithful and loving to my wife. So all of those things create an amazing life. So today, accountability may well be the secret to success.
No, I love that. And I like how you tied with the book component is a monetary piece, or something that you knew that if you didn't do this, that you would have to pay in some way. And again, obviously it doesn't have to be monetary, but I think that's just an interesting aspect, because it means to me that you say you do what you said you're going to do. So for example, if I tell you I'm going to call you at this point, you know that the phone's going to ring and it's going to be me. So I'm really glad that you touched on that. And I think it's interesting how you tied also your kids and your wife, because people, I think, a lot of times do the business first, second, third, and then kind of leave everything else after.
Well, I might have used to have been more that way, but as I've gotten older, I've fortunately gotten wiser. And so I have young kids as an older guy, and I'm so glad, I have an older daughter that I really wasn't as good a dad for. She and I have an incredible relationship now, and I've apologized to her for how hard I worked and how little present I was when I was younger. But at the end of the day, now I'm a really, really good dad. You don't always get it right away. It takes time. And the reason I'm good at it now is because you hear me talking about it all the time, just to remind myself. I'm very goal driven. I have 80 goals written down for this year. But the first set of goals, it's about 10, is all about my family and my relationship with my wife and my kids. And I always put that first.
No, I love that. Did you say 80 as in 80?
Yeah. And by the way, I'm a master goal setter, and so I'm not encouraging other people to do that. If your listeners want to go to thegoaltemplate.com, thegoaltemplate.com, they can download a free piece of paper on this, but like a idea on how we set our goals. But yeah, I'm super avid about setting goals in the 8 gardens of life, which is relationship, spiritual, physical, intellectual, lifestyle, environment, personal, financial, material, and career goals. So I'm very, very dedicated to that. I read those goals. I strike them off every time I read them. I probably read them 100 days out of the year. And it's how I manifest my unconscious into consciousness.
Now, are those 8 gardens of life, are they on the goaltemplate.com?
Yes, they are.
Awesome. I appreciate that. So I want to change lanes for a second and wanted to ask you, David, if you could have dinner with anybody, dead or alive, who would it be and why?
Well, it would have to be Jesus. I mean, I'd have to start there because that's the biggest mystery of the universe. And I have so many questions and I would have so much to learn. If you want to have a less, controversial character, I guess it would be probably Benjamin Franklin, who I think was one of the forefathers of franchising and business in America and just such a great thinker. And why is because I've read the autobiography of Benjamin Franklin and I've read the Bible cover to cover, and I'm just so full of questions for either one of those meetings. And by the way, I try to meet a billionaire every year, and I always ask them a ton of questions. But one of my favorite questions is, what are the 3 traits that you think got you to where you are? Yeah. And then I ask them how many hours you work and things like that. If they tell me they work 100 hours a week when they're 50, they're not my role model. So it's interesting. And the trait that always comes up when you ask the 3 traits in various forms, there's one that always comes up. What do you think it is?
Discipline.
Similar, very similar. It's persistence, tenacity. I never quit. There's always a variation of that in there. And then the others could be like, I have a great vision, or I'm really good at, creating businesses, or I'm really good at technology. But there's one that's always in there, which is persistence, relentlessness, never quit. That's just exactly what your podcast is about. You can't win in life unless you get back up, even though someone just kicked your teeth out.
So I got to ask you then, what are your 3 traits?
Yeah, persistence, obviously, because that's one of my favorite words. Creativity. I'm a big fan of creativity. It's probably why I have so much going on. I'm not sure it's the only way. I mean, Gary Keller wrote a great book called The One Thing that talks about focusing on the one thing. I have like 60, 70 sources of income from different things I've created at various levels, from $100 a year all the way up to over $1 million a year. And then I would say relationship. The third one would be relationship, having great people, mentors, teachers, brothers, sisters, neighbors, friends, kids. Like the relationships as I get older is it's so much more important than it was when I was younger.
I think that's amazing that you touched on that last piece, because in today's day and age with technology, it's amazing that we have the ability to connect with people in such a way. But I think in so many ways, we're losing some of that true one-on-one component of the actual relationship. So I'm glad you touched on that. And some of the best relationships I have, they've taken a long time to really establish.
I agree with that. And also, as I've gotten older, I've been blessed. You don't have to hold on to the relationships you started with. So I've been blessed with such great friends and relationships now. And most of them I was a military brat, so I have almost no friends from my childhood. But I've had a lot of friends I've had to shed along the way too. And your path to growth, if someone's not as committed to personal growth as you are and they want to just go drink and watch sports all the time, it's okay to thank them for the friendship they were in college or in high school and move on. Because if you don't move on, you don't create that space for the great friendships. And I'm super happy with the friendships I have today and grateful for them. And I had to create space for some of those. And some people, I think we've parted ways because of our different approaches to life.
I'm really glad you touched on that, because as Jim Rohn says, you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most of your time with. I think people have the idea and the concept of leveling up or averaging up, and it's okay to switch friends along the way. And like you said, friends that were there for you in high school and college maybe are not even around you as far as physically across the country or across the world. And in different points, you get different relationships. And you had talked about the fact that your daughter and Hal's daughter are the same age. If you have other friends that, for example, aren't married or don't have kids, you're going to have different wavelengths as far as how you go. And I'm just glad you touched on that, because I think it's something that people don't realize is it's not offensive to move on in different areas of life.
Everything has a use by date. One of my teachers, Fred Gross, taught me this, and I loved it. He said, everything has a use by date. And if you start trying to drink the milk after it's gone bad, you're going to get sick. And if you try to hold on to things that no longer serve you, I used to love playing video games. I don't play them anymore. I haven't picked up a video game in a couple of years, except to play with my kids occasionally. But I used to love them. I could spend hours and hours playing video games. But that day ran out, and everything has a use by date. I used to go out to clubs. That's expired for me. So And if you don't and then friendships sometimes have a useful lifetime. I've had great employees before that moved on after 10 years, and we had a great 10 years, and it was okay that they moved on because we weren't on the same wavelength anymore. It was time for us to go different ways. And so everything has a use by date, and you have to respect that in life.
No, I could not agree more at that, and I think it's important to move on in different ways. So wanted to ask you, David, what's the best way for our listeners to connect or follow you and some of the amazing things that you're doing?
www.davidosborn.com is my website, and it's everything's right there. There's no E on Osborn, just osborn.com, and that's the easiest way to reach me. Or pick up my book, Wealth Can't Wait, or Miracle Morning Millionaires. And they've got info on how to reach me in the back of those as well.
And then I wanted to ask you if you have any parting words you'd like to leave with our listeners.
Dream big and write your dreams down. Put them into goals. So kind of just take a journal, go someplace like that you're inspired, and write everything you'd like to have in the next 3-5 years of your life, whether it's health, relationship, adventure, business, financial success, and then try to take those spirits, those movements, those feelings, and then convey them and break them down into individual goals in your gardens. And then just take that goal sheet. It doesn't have to be 80. That's too many. I would suggest you start at 10 or 15 and just read them every single day and try to make small steps of progress towards your goals. And if you'll write down 20 goals that you're inspired by and read them 100 times a year, I would bet that you'll hit 10 to 15 of those without any question. And if you do that for 3, 4, 5 years, you'll just have the life of your dreams. And the best thing you can do for me is to have the life of your dreams, because what's better than a nation full of people or community full of people that are living their dreams?
I could not agree more at that. So listen, David, I truly, truly appreciate your time, and I look forward to hopefully connecting with you again soon.
Christopher, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. Great questions.
Thank you for listening to episode number 189. If you are interested in personal development, I'm sure you enjoyed today's episode. I know that I found myself taking a ton of notes throughout the interview. One thing that I absolutely loved was how David spoke about how his breakdown in his career eventually led to his breakthrough. He mentioned how when he meets successful people today, he asks them the 3 traits that got them to where they are today. What a great question, and something I'll definitely add to my repertoire. David shared how for 2019, he has written down 80 goals. He also gave us his goals template, which can be found at thegoaltemplate.com. I highly recommend that all of our listeners check it out. Near the end of the interview, David touched upon how and why it is so important to work on yourself. I think that is something that we should all take from today's episode. The importance of bettering ourselves. First and foremost, before you can be a better dad, mom, son, daughter, spouse, person, or a friend, you need to become a better you. I challenge you today to do something selfish for yourself, to better yourself. Pick up a book, listen to a podcast, sign up for a seminar, find a mentor, or maybe even hire a coach. But today, be selfish for you. And as you go for your greatness, remember yourself. I would like to end with a quote by Paulo Coelho. When we strive to become better than we are, everything around us becomes better too. And lastly, to our listeners, thank you. We truly appreciate your time, and we hope our episodes inspire you to keep on attacking life and never giving up. To quote Dr. Norman Vincent Peale, it's always too early to quit.